He was just a quiet mechanic in a snow-blanketed town, haunted by a tragedy, living in silence, fixing broken engines, but never his own heart. Then one freezing morning, he saw a lifeless figure beneath the ice. He dove in, and when she whispered just 6 words, words barely heard but impossible to forget, his life was never the same again. What happens when the person you rescue ends up rescuing you? This is a story of quiet love, second chances, and the extraordinary power of simple kindness tested by shadows from the past and the courage to confront them. If you believe in stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after they end, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss what's next. Now let's begin. Cal Whitaker had never planned to walk the lake that morning. He didn't plan much these days, not since life had unraveled with the cold precision of a snapped tow cable. His existence was measured in cups of lukewarm coffee, the mournful creak of old tools, and the metronomic rhythm of wrench turning at his auto shop, Lakemont's sole mechanical solace. Plans were for people who still believed the future held anything more than a repeat of the past, or at least a tolerable deviation. Cal had learned to stop looking ahead the winter he lost his daughter Ellie. The sky above Lakemont, Minnesota was the color of steel wool, heavy and low, pressing down like a physical weight. Snowflakes, fat and deliberate, drifted down in a silence so thick it seemed sacred. That's what Cal, in a strange way, had come to appreciate about winter. It didn't expect anything from you. It simply was cold and impartial. His boots crunched over the fresh, undisturbed layer of snow as he walked the perimeter of the lake. It was a ritual more than a destination, an unconscious vigil born of grief and a refusal to completely let go. Every year, around this time, right after Thanksgiving, had mumbled its way past, he came here. The lake, a vast frozen mirror under the brooding sky, hadn't just taken his daughter. It had taken the last version of himself that believed in miracles. And yet, he still came, his eyes scanning the ice with an ache he no longer named. He sometimes felt an unease by the water that was different from grief, an old buried whisper of something wrong tied to this place, something he could never quite grasp, like a forgotten sour note in an otherwise familiar melody. He'd heard whispers years ago about the old Peterson administration, and then Sheriff Peterson's stories of corner-cutting permits rushed through and looking the other way, especially concerning some new industrial interests north of town. But they were just town gossip, weren't they? Vague memories like silt stirred from the lake bed. Halfway around the bend, past the old wooden dock whose skeletal pilings hadn't cradled a boat in years, something snagged his attention. A shape barely discernible beneath the freshly dusted ice, muted by the shifting snow. It looked like a discarded log at first, a dark amorphous smudge. But logs didn't wear red, a vibrant, desperate slash of color. Logs didn't float with their arms outstretched as if reaching. Cal's breath hitched and then froze in his chest. No, no, no. He whispered, words dissolving into frosted puffs, his body already moving. He dropped to his knees at the lake's edge, swiping away snow. The face under the thin ice was pale lips, and ominous blue dark hair fanned out. A girl young, heartbreakingly so. Her hand clutched a sketchbook in a plastic bag. Cal found a jagged rock and smashed it against the ice. The second blow punched through. He used his bare, bleeding hands, grunting. The cold was a shock wave, but pain was distant. He dove the frigid embrace, stealing his breath. He reached her, his numb fingers closing around her arm, then her waist, and pulled. His chest burned. When he broke the surface, dragging her limp body onto the snow-covered shore, he began chest compressions. "Come on," he grunted. "Breathe," then a cough, a choked, ragged noise. She turned her head, vomiting lake water, and gasped for air, eyes fluttering. Cal scrambled out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her. "You're all right," he whispered. She looked at him dazed. Her lips moved, then barely audible, a wisp of sound. I wish someone had saved me sooner. Her eyes rolled back. At the Lakemont ER, a flurry of motion. The nurses called it a miracle. No ID, no phone. Just that ruined sketchbook. They logged her in as Jane Doe. Cal stayed replaying her words as he gave his statement to Deputy Mark Evans, a young, earnest officer. "She say anything else?" Mr. Whitaker Evans asked. "Just that. She wished someone had saved her sooner." Evans nodded, his expression somber. "A lot of folks feel that way, especially this time of year. The cold, it gets to people. Some kinds of cold you can't see." He glanced at Cal's bandaged knuckles. "You did a brave thing, sir." Cal shook his head. When she was stable, breathing steadily, he found himself sitting beside her bed. That whisper replayed. What did she mean? His eyes drifted to the sketchbook a nurse had dried and left on the bedside table. Water-blurred drawings, faces without features, empty chairs, a lone girl staring at nothing. Then near the center, a sketch eerily untouched by water, a man standing alone on a frozen lake. It was him. He knew the set of his shoulders. She had drawn him before they'd ever met. That night, Cal sat with a girl whose name he didn't know, wondering if his walk to the lake hadn't been an accident. He woke with a start to the rustling of sheets. She was awake. "Hey," he said gently. "You're safe. You're in a hospital." She blinked. He held a straw to her lips. "Where?" she whispered. "Lakemont, General." "You were in the lake. I pulled you out." She closed her eyes. "I don't remember. Not the lake. Not how I got there." "What about your name?" A long pause. "Ivy," she said. "I think Ivy Monroe." Her eyes drifted to the sketchbook. "Is that mine?" She took it trembling. Her fingers paused on a drawing, two faceless figures huddled on a snowy park bench. Another, an empty, dark window. "I drew these," she said, wonder in her voice. She flipped further breath, catching at a sketch of a man's gnarled hand gripping a steering wheel, then jagged lines of a car veering off a road. She shuddered. "This one makes me feel sick." "Memories take their time," Cal said. "Why are you still here?" she asked, her gaze direct. Cal hesitated. "Guess I just didn't want you waking up alone." He shrugged. "Old habit. If something's broken, I tend to stick around. Doesn't always mean I can fix it, though." A flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Some things, maybe they aren't meant to be fixed. Just survived." Later that night, Ivy drifted into a healing sleep. Cal took the uncomfortable chair again. For the first time in a decade, he didn't want to be anywhere else. The wind had calmed by morning. Ivy woke more alert. "You stayed?" she said, surprised. Didn't feel right leaving. A ghost of a smile. "That's unexpectedly kind. Don't know if it's kindness, maybe habit. I fix things, or try to." Ivy lowered her gaze to her sketchbook. "I don't feel broken, not physically. I feel empty. A shadow of remembered fear. And hunted. Does that make sense, to feel hunted when you don't know who or what is hunting you?" Her eyes scanned the hospital room doorway, as if expecting someone to appear. Cal sidestepped the hunted comment for now, though a knot tightened in his own stomach. She opened the book. "Did you look through all of this? Some of it?" "I drew all of these," she said, "but I don't remember. Just flashes, sensations. Like that hand on the wheel. I feel a drop like falling." She flipped to a page depicting a young woman in a dimly lit diner walls, appearing to lean in. "I think I was afraid. Terribly afraid." Afraid of what or who? Her fingers turned to the sketch of him on the frozen lake. "This one," she said, "feels familiar, but not in a scary way. More like inevitable." "That's me," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. I drew you before we met, maybe Cal said. Or maybe we were just meant to meet. Ivy's voice tensed. I don't think I just fell in. I don't think it was an accident. She swallowed. I think her voice became a raw whisper. I think I wanted to disappear. Or someone wanted me to. Dr. Henderson gave Ivy a tentative discharge 2 more days. Deputy Evans returned, more pointed in his questioning. Still no matches for Ivy Monroe. Makes you wonder if Ivy Monroe is even her real name, or if someone doesn't want her found. Before Ivy could voice her anxiety, Cal heard himself say, "She can stay with me." Dr. Henderson and Deputy Evans blinked. Are you family, Mr. Whitaker? No. Just the guy who found her. I've got an empty spare room. He turned to Ivy. Only if you want to. She studied him, then nodded. Okay. Thank you, Cal. Driving home, Cal thought of Evan's concern. An unusual disappearance. Ivy's feeling of being hunted. He pushed it down, but it lingered like the metallic taste of fear. The porch light of his cabin cast an amber glow. Ivy moved slowly. Mind the top step, Cal said, steadying her. Inside it smelled of cedar-old books machine oil. A wood stove crackled. Didn't expect company, Cal said awkwardly, but I've got clean sheets. It's perfect, Ivy replied. It feels still, peaceful. Bedrooms down the hall on the left. Bathrooms across. I'll take the couch. You don't have to. I want to. Besides, he added a rare glimmer of humor, I snore like a freight train stuck in a blizzard. You'll thank me. That earned him a soft laugh. After Ivy settled into the guest room, Ellie's room a fact unvoiced but heavy in the air for Cal. Cal sat by the stove. A while later, Ivy reappeared hair damp from a shower sketchbook clutched. Can I sit out here? She sat opening the sketchbook. Some feel like faint memories, others like dreams or nightmares. She pointed to a recurring image, a dark, sleek, expensive car under a lone, flickering streetlight driver, obscured. This car? It feels threatening. Can you tell which are memories? Not yet. Foggy. She looked at him directly. You think I'm crazy, don't you? A woman who draws things she can't remember, thinks she's hunted, turns up in a lake. I think you're scared, Cal said simply. And you've got every right to be after what happened. Crazy doesn't enter into it. She looked up. That's surprisingly poetic for a mechanic. He smirked. I read a lot of bumper stickers, and sometimes the back of cereal boxes. Deep stuff. She laughed louder this time. Her face, animated, lost some of its haunted quality. She turned a page. This one. A garage, tools on a pegboard, a red toolbox, an old dented workbench. I think it might be your garage, Cal. He leaned over. The distinctive pattern of tools, the dent he'd made years ago dropping a transmission. I must have seen it, Ivy murmured. Wandering. Or maybe, Cal said gently, it's just something you needed to see. A safe place. Do you think broken people recognize each other? Cal. Is that what this is? I think broken people just stop pretending first. They see the cracks in themselves and others, and they don't flinch. Maybe they just know what kind of glue works best. Thank you, she said, for not pushing me. For just letting me be. You'll tell me what you need to when you're ready. That night, Cal's house didn't feel quite so empty. Morning. Coffee hissed. Ivy appeared wrapped in his oversized coat. You always this quiet? Ivy asked, sipping the coffee he handed her. Or is it just my dramatic entrance into your life that's rendered you speechless? He offered a rare, lopsided grin. Only when I don't have anything worth saying. Or when I'm trying to figure out if my guest is a secret agent or just really good at making an entrance. She laughed. Definitely not a secret agent. Too clumsy. probably just very good at falling into lakes. After breakfast, Cal headed to the garage. Got a couple of cars. You're welcome to hang out. Can I bring my sketchbook? Sure. Just don't draw me contorted under a car. I've got a reputation as a dignified grease monkey to uphold. Ivy found an old stool. Cal worked, occasionally glancing over. She studied older sketches, adding a line of shadow. At midday, he offered her a soda. She had a new page open his hands. Strong, weathered, scarred lines of ingrained grease. She'd drawn not just their appearance, but their tension weariness, and surprisingly, something tender. You make them look more noble than they are, he muttered. They mostly just smell of oil and frustration. Ivy smiled. You fix things that are broken. That's noble enough. Later, as dusk painted the sky, Ivy came inside from a walk, cheeks flushed. Cal was making stew. She showed him a new page, his garage, not as it was, but warmer. She sat by an imagined window, sunlight illuminating her, and him leaning over an engine, a faint smile on his lips. It was a sketch of what could be. You see more than most people do, Ivy. I think I just see what people try very hard to hide. Thank you, Cal, for letting me stay, for that wall between my room and the snoring freight train. He chuckled. You don't owe me anything, Ivy, but if staying here helps you find your way, that's thanks enough. The cold, sharp and clean sank into his bones, but it wasn't the isolating chill. Cal went for extra blankets. He passed Ellie's room door slightly ajar. He stepped inside. Dust motes danced, Ellie's quilt stuffed animals, her desk covered in art supplies, sketchbooks. One he noticed was moved. He reached for it. Ellie's whimsical drawings. Then near the end, Cal in the garage, younger. The last unfinished, the lake familiar curve, old dock. The center where water should be was blank, smudged. A soft knock. Ivy stood there, apprehensive. I'm so sorry. I wasn't prying. I saw the sketchbooks. I picked one up. This was her room, wasn't it? He nodded. Yeah, this was Ellie's. Her drawings, they're beautiful. She wanted to be an artist, said she wanted to teach kids to find beauty in ordinary, even broken things. Ivy's gaze fell on the unfinished lake sketch. Why didn't she finish it? I don't know. She started it a few days before. The accident. Ivy looked at it, then met his eyes. She reached for a pencil. Would it be okay if I tried to finish it, to honor it? He nodded slowly. Yes, Ivy. I think she'd like that. That night, Ivy sat at the kitchen table. With delicate strokes, she shaded the lake-added ripples, defined the dock. In the blank space, she drew two figures, a small, bright girl recognizable as Ellie, and beside her, a man taller, shoulders familiar. Holding hands, silhouettes gazing at a peaceful, sun-dappled lake. When she showed Cal, he stared, then looked away, a shaky exhale. I didn't know I needed that, he said, his voice raw. Ivy nodded, eyes shining. Neither did I, Cal. The following days, a new routine settled. Ivy seemed to regain a little more strength, a little more of herself with each passing day, though shadows still flickered in her eyes. She spent hours with her sketchbook, not always drawing new things, but poring over the old ones, a frown of concentration on her face. The dark SUV, the gnarled hand on the wheel, the sense of falling. These images still haunted her. That SUV, she said one afternoon, tracing its outline in her sketchbook, it feels local sometimes, if that makes sense. Not just from wherever I came from before, but like I've seen it here, or something like it. Lots of dark SUVs in Minnesota winter, Ivy. Practical. Cal tried to sound reassuring, but a sliver of unease touched him. Deputy Evans had quietly asked if Cal had noticed any unfamiliar vehicles around. Maybe. She wasn't convinced. Feeling Ivy's rising anxiety, Cal suggested, Lakemont has a tiny library. more like a large closet with books run by Mrs. Henderson's cousin, Agnes Perot. She knows everything about this town. Maybe a change of scenery would do you good. You could even look up, I don't know, Minnesota flora for your drawings. Ivy hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Some fresh air, even if it's freezing, might be good. The Lakemont Library and Historical Archive was indeed small-smelling of old paper and lemon polish. Agnes Perot, a woman whose sharp blue eyes seemed to miss nothing despite her 80-odd years, greeted Ivy with a keen, appraising look. "Cal Whitaker's girl, are you?" she said not unkindly. "Heard he pulled someone from the ice." "Brave fella Cal, always was. Shame about his Ellie." Ivy felt a pang. "I'm staying with him for a bit." "Good. House needs some life." Agnes gestured vaguely. "Help yourself. Not much call for research in Lakemont. Mostly just folks wanting the latest bestsellers, which we get 3 months late." Ivy wandered the narrow aisles. She found a small section on local history. Old bound newspapers typed town meeting minutes. On a whim, thinking about the lake's odd feel Cal had mentioned, and some vague, unsettling impressions from her own fragmented memories connected to shadowy corporations and illicit dealings. Impressions perhaps fueled by the coded ledger entries she'd once glimpsed before her flight. She started looking for any mention of environmental concerns or industrial accidents. Hours passed. She found a few vague articles from 20-25 years ago. Concerns raised over unidentified waste disposal near North Lakemont sector. Another a week later, local authorities assure public North Lakemont water safe after thorough review. It named the sheriff at the time, Al Peterson. Then tucked into a manila folder misfiled under agricultural runoff solutions, she found a more recent scathing, anonymously penned letter to the editor of a now-defunct local newsletter. It accused AQR Disposal of systematic illegal dumping near the North Lakemont watershed, and Sheriff Peterson of taking hefty bribes to look the other way, even providing a list of dates where suspicious tanker trucks were seen heading towards Peterson's newly acquired hunting cabin access road. "Find anything interesting?" dear Agnes asked, peering over her spectacles, as Ivy brought the dusty folder and the old newspaper copies to the main desk. Maybe. These old articles, and this letter, about waste dumping near the north end of the lake by a company called AQR, and Sheriff Peterson's involvement, did anything ever come of it? Agnes's face hardened, her eyes like chips of winter ice. That. Yes, I remember that fuss. A lot of us were worried. My own cousin downwind his well water started tasting funny, kids got sick. Nothing ever proven, of course. Then that smooth-talking fella from AQR, Silas something or other, I think was his name, very persuasive, came to town. Met with Sheriff Peterson and the council behind closed doors. Next thing we knew, Peterson was on the radio saying it was all a misunderstanding, some naturally occurring mineral deposits, nothing to worry about. End of story. She snorted. Peterson always did land on his feet. Some said he landed a little too comfortably after that AQR business blew over. New boat winter trips to Florida built that ridiculous summer house on the clean side of the lake. Some of us never bought it. A cold dread washed over Ivy. Silas, the name from her nightmares, the name associated with the ledger. AQR Disposal, Silas. That's the one. Nasty piece of work that Silas, if you ask me though, he could charm a snake. Why, you know them. Agnes's eyes were like gimlets, sharp and knowing. Ivy shook her head, feeling faint. No. Just a name I saw somewhere. In a bad dream. She copied the articles and the letter quickly, her hands shaking. The ledger she'd stolen, the one detailing Silas's crimes, had entries coded references to LM, oversight pimps, and coordinates that, if she remembered right from her terrified glance, were worryingly close to this very area of Minnesota. This felt bigger, darker than she'd ever imagined. The noose was tightening. The snow, when it came that particular week, arrived with a sudden, brutal fury. It started mid-afternoon, innocent flakes, then escalated into a blinding, swirling whiteout. By dusk, Cal's cabin vanished into a maelstrom. The wind howled like a hungry wolf. Ivy pressed her palm to the ice-cold kitchen window, watching the world dissolve. Behind her, Cal stirred stew on the wood stove. The radio crackled, playing a tinny Christmas carol, then abruptly died. The power flickered twice, lights wavered, then groaned into darkness. "Gonna be a rough one," Cal said calmly, lighting an oil lamp. "Phone lines will be down too if they're not already. Probably lost the cell tower in this." Ivy didn't respond, her posture rigid. The wind shrieked, rattling the very window panes, sounding like angry fists. Just then, headlights cut a swathe through the blizzard, briefly illuminating the swirling snow. A large, dark SUV rumbled slowly past, far slower than normal, its tires crunching audibly, even over the storm. It hesitated, almost stopped directly in line with their driveway, then lurched forward, disappearing. Ivy gasped, a choked sound. "Did you see that car? It looked like the one in my drawings." The dark SUV Cal moved to the window, wiping condensation. Only receding taillights swallowed by the storm. Probably just someone lost Ivy. Nasty out. Easy to miss a turn. "No," she whispered, eyes wide with new, horrifyingly specific terror. It slowed down. They saw the smoke from the chimney, or the lamplight. They know. Her earlier research with Agnes, the AQR connection, the name Silas, it all crashed into her with sickening certainty. It wasn't just her past. It was tangled with this town, with Cal, with Ellie. Ivy Cal set the spoon down, a chill unrelated to the storm creeping up his spine. "I can't," she gasped, hands trembling, backing away from the window. "He found me. Oh God, he found me." "Who found you, Ivy? Look at me. You're safe." But her eyes were wild, darting around the small cabin, as if the walls themselves were closing in. She shook her head frantically. It's too much." "He's here, I know he is. It's just the storm," Ivy Cal said, gently moving towards her. But her terror was too specific, too visceral. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the rug, curling inward, the sketchbook skittering across the floor. Cal knelt beside her. "Ivy, can I touch your hand?" Her fingers closed around his with desperate, crushing strength. Okay. Breathe with me. Just breathe." It took a long time, the only sounds her ragged gasps and the screaming wind. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "Don't be sorry. Just breathe." "I hate this," she whispered, tears streaming. "He always finds me. Always." "Who's he?" Ivy Cal asked, voice low but firm. "You need to tell me." Before she could answer, a heavy booming thud from the front porch, distinct even over the storm, then sharp, insistent, aggressive knocking that seemed to shake the door in its frame. Cal's blood ran cold. He exchanged a terrified look with Ivy, whose face was ashen, all color drained. "Stay here," he mouthed, his eyes darting to the heavy iron poker from beside the stove. He grabbed it, its cold weight a grim reassurance. The knocking came again, louder, angrier, followed by a shove that rattled the latch. "Cal Whitaker," a voice boomed, deep and gravelly, amplified by the wind, chillingly menacing. "I know she's in there. We saw the light. Just send the girl out and we can discuss this like reasonable men. Don't make this difficult." Ivy stifled a sob, pressing herself further into the floor. Cal peered through a tiny crack in the curtains. A large, dark silhouette bulked up by a heavy coat and a second less distinct shape behind him. "Two." "Who is that, Ivy?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over her hitched breathing in the storm. "Silas," she choked out the name, a raw wound. "And probably Mitch, his enforcer." "Silas." He's the reason I was in the lake. The ledger I took him, it detailed his operations with AQR, illegal dumping bribery. I was running from him. The door shuddered under a heavy kickwood groaning. Don't make me break it down, Whitaker. I just want what's mine. Her and the damned ledger she took. Give her up and you walk away clean. Ledger. The AQR ledger Agnes had hinted at, the one Ivy must have been looking at. The cellar, Cal hissed, heart-pounding, pointing towards the kitchen. Through the kitchen trapdoor, under the rug. Now don't make a sound. Terror gave Ivy speed. She scrambled up, fumbling with the trapdoor latch in the flickering lamplight. Cal stood by the front door, poker raised. What do you want? He called, playing for time. His voice surprisingly steady. Her, and the account book she stole. Last chance, old man, Cal. Heard the trap door creak open, then softly close. He backed slowly towards the kitchen, poker ready. With a deafening, splintering crack, the front door burst inward, torn from its top hinge. Silas loomed in the doorway, a mountain of a man, snowflakes swirling around him, his face, hard eyes like glacial ice. Behind him, Mitch, wiry and ferret-eyed, stamped snow from his boots. Silas held a large industrial wrench gripped like a weapon. Mitch, a tire iron. Where is she? Silas growled, his breath fogging in the cold air rushing into the cabin. Not here, Cal said, gripping the poker, planting his feet. Silas sneered, his eyes scanning the small cabin. Don't lie to me, old man. Mitch here, he's got friends in low places. Saw her with you at the hospital, then heard she shacked up with the local hero. His eyes swept the room, landed on Ivy's sketchbook near the stove, open to a page showing the dark car. He picked it up, a cruel amusement playing on his lips. Talented girl. Drew everything, didn't she? He flipped a page, stopped at a detailed sketch of a complex safe mechanism. Ah, yes. Evidence of her prying into things that weren't her concern. Then his sharp gaze caught the slight disturbance of the rug near the kitchen entrance, the faint outline of the trap door. A cruel, triumphant smile spread across his face. Clever girl. Hiding in the dirt like a rat. He lunged for the kitchen. Cal swung the poker, connecting with Silas's outstretched arm with a sickening thud. Silas roared in pain and surprise, dropping the wrench, but his momentum carried him forward. He turned on Cal, fury blazing in his eyes, no longer amused. Then from outside the kitchen window, a flickering orange glow began to reflect off the swirling snow. Silas, momentarily distracted by the sound of Cal's blow and his own pain, glanced towards it. Mitch, the woodpile. And the kindling by the porch, get it going good. If the rat won't come out, we smoke her out. Burn the whole damn shack down if we have to. Mitch, who had been moving towards the cellar entrance. Cal was now blocking, grinned with feral delight, and darted back towards the shattered porch where flames were beginning to lick at the dry siding of the cabin, fed by the howling wind. He's trying to burn us out, Cal yelled, shoving Silas back as the larger man recovered. The small living room became a frantic battleground. Furniture crashed. Cal, strong from years of manual labor, was still outmatched by Silas's brute bulk and viciousness, but desperation and rage fueled him. He fought not just for Ivy, but for the sanctity of his home, for Ellie's memory. From the cellar, Ivy heard the struggle, the crashes, Silas's roars, Cal's grunts of exertion. Then she smelled it, the acrid, choking scent of wood smoke starting to seep through the floorboards. She couldn't stay hidden. They would burn alive. Her eyes frantically scanning the dim cellar in the sliver of light from above, found an old rusted shovel leaning against the damp earth wall. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she pushed the trapdoor open. Silas had Cal pinned against the far wall, one massive hand closing around Cal's throat, lifting him slightly. Cal's face was turning purple, his poker clattering to the floor. Mitch was back inside, his ferret face alight with malevolent glee as smoke billowed from the burning porch, thick thickening the air in the main room. "Get away from him!" Ivy screamed, bursting from the cellar hatch like a fury, swinging the heavy shovel with all her might. It struck Mitch squarely across the back of his legs with a dull, sickening crack. He howled in agony, his legs buckling, and crumpled to the floor, dropping his tire iron. Silas momentarily distracted by the scream, and Mitch's cry loosened his death grip on Cal. Cal gasped for air, shoving Silas away with a desperate surge of strength. Ivy, adrenaline pumping, swung the shovel again, this time at Silas. He partially deflected it with his forearm, yelping in pain as the metal edge grazed him. The cabin was rapidly filling with dense, acrid smoke. The fire, whipped by the blizzard, was taking greedy hold of the porch wall, flames now visible licking at the window frames. The garage. Cal choked out his voice, grabbing Ivy's arm. "It's our only chance." They stumbled through the smoke-filled kitchen towards the connecting door to the attached garage. It was thick, heavy, a fire-resistant door Cal had installed years ago after a small electrical fire scare. He fumbled with the heavy-duty latch, wrenched it open. They plunged into the cold, dark, relatively clear air of the space as flames began to roar louder behind them, the heat already intense. Silas, bellowing in rage and pain, his arm bleeding, followed them. Mitch, groaning on the floor, trying to get up. The garage was vast, dark, lit only by the flickering orange light from the burning section of the cabin, now fiercely visible through the connecting door's small wired glass window and the eerie, diffuse white glare of the blizzard through the main garage door windows. The wind howled outside, shaking the large metal door. "He has a bad knee," Ivy gasped, remembering a detail from the scribbled notes in the ledger she'd risked everything for. Left one slipped on ice last winter in Chicago during a collection. Permanently damaged, Silas burst in a terrifying silhouette against the firelight from the cabin. "You little rats know where to run now. I'll burn you both in this tin can." "Maybe not Silas," Cal yelled, his voice echoing in the large space. He dodged behind his heavy steel workbench. "But this is my turf." He kicked a half-full 50-gallon drum of used motor oil, sending it rolling heavily across the concrete floor. Silas sidestepped, but the sudden movement forced him to put unexpected weight on his left leg, and he visibly winced, a flicker of pain crossing his face. Mitch staggered in, clutching his tire iron eyes, watering from the smoke, his leg clearly injured. Ivy, quick-witted, grabbed a spray can of engine degreaser from the workbench. As Mitch lunged towards Cal, she sprayed the powerful solvent directly into his face. He screamed a high-pitched shriek, dropping the tire iron and clawing at his eyes. Blinded and disoriented, he stumbled backwards and fell heavily into the open maintenance pit Cal used for working under vehicles. A sickening thud, then a groan, then silence from the darkness of the pit. Silas, seeing Mitch fall, was momentarily stunned, his furious advance faltering. Cal seized the chance. He yanked hard on the chain of an old engine hoist that stood in the corner, a heavy V8 engine block suspended from it. With a grunt, he sent the engine block swinging like a monstrous pendulum across the garage. Silas ducked instinctively, but it forced him back, tripping him over a stack of old tires. He landed heavily, his bad left knee twisting under him with an audible pop. "Your precious town, Whitaker," Silas snarled, trying to push himself up, his face contorted in pain and fury, the recovered wrench still in his good hand. It wasn't so pristine, that spineless Sheriff Peterson. He knew which side his bread was buttered on. AQR lined his pockets for years to look the other way. Your girl Ellie. Such a shame she was. He spat the words out, his voice dripping with venom. Always playing by that filthy lake. Maybe she drank a little too much of Lakemont's special water from up north, eh? The good stuff AQR was paid so handsomely to make disappear right under Peterson's nose. He guaranteed us no one would ever know. The words hit Cal like a physical blow, harder than any punch Silas could throw. Ellie, Peterson, AQR. The whispers, Agnes's words, and the lake's oppressive unease, it all coalesced into a monstrous, undeniable truth. His daughter's unexplained illness, her fading energy. Rage, cold and pure and terrible, flooded him, eclipsing the fear, the smoke, the pain. Ivy, meanwhile, had scrambled onto a rickety wooden ladder leading to a small storage loft Cal rarely used. She'd seen him store old, heavy canvas tarps up there, dusty and forgotten. With desperate strength, she managed to dislodge one. A massive, thick painter's tarp weighted with years of dust and grime. As Silas, using the wrench as a crutch, finally heaved himself up to lunge for Cal, who was momentarily staggered by the horrifying implication of Silas's words, Ivy shoved the heavy tarp with all her might. It unfurled like a grotesque shroud, heavy and suffocating, falling directly onto Silas, momentarily blinding and entangling him in its dusty folds. Now, Cal. His knee, Ivy screamed from the loft, her voice cutting through the roar of the fire that was now starting to char the connecting doorframe. Cal, shaking off the paralyzing shock of Silas's revelation, saw his opening. He grabbed a long, heavy pry bar from the toolboard on the wall. Silas was struggling, roaring like a trapped animal under the heavy canvas. Cal raised the pry bar high and brought it down with all his strength, not on the exposed ankle, but aimed squarely at the bulge in the tarp he knew was Silas's injured left knee. There was a sickening sharp crack, and Silas shrieked a raw, inhuman sound of pure agony, collapsing completely, the fight knocked out of him. Breathing hard, Cal and Ivy stared at the subdued figures. The smoke in the garage was now thick and biting the roar of the fire from the burning cabin growing louder, the connecting door glowing red. Suddenly, the main garage door rattled violently. Then powerful flashing red and blue lights pulsed through the blizzard-streaked windows, painting the chaotic, smoke-filled scene in shifting, ghostly colors. Two figures in dark sheriff's department uniforms burst in. Not through the burning cabin, but by forcing the side service door of the garage with a pry bar of their own. Freeze. Sheriff's Department. Nobody move. It was Deputy Mark Evans, service weapon steady, and Sheriff Brody, older face grim, shotgun leveled. Brody's eyes took in the scene, the heavy smoke, the subdued groaning men Cal and Ivy, breathless, soot-stained, and clutching makeshift weapons. What in God's name? Brody began, his voice hoarse. Agnes Perrault, bundled to her eyes, in a heavy coat and scarf. Snow clinging to her, appeared like a Valkyrie behind them. Saw the flames from my place, Sheriff. Even through this hellacious storm, knew Cal'd be in trouble with those city types sniffing around Ivy. I told you something was rotten about AQR and Peterson all those years ago. She'd struggled nearly a quarter mile through the blizzard to her nearest neighbor, whose phone line, miraculously, was still working. Silas, cuffed and groaning, his leg grotesquely twisted, glared at Cal with pure hatred as Evans read him his rights. You think this is over, old man, he rasped, pain, making his voice weak but still venomous. Peterson made sure AQR's deposits were deep and well hidden. But poison seeps, Whitaker. It always seeps. Your whole damn town's been drinking it for years thanks to him. Think about that when you mourn your girl. Brody looked from Silas's pain-racked, hateful face to Cal's stony, grief-stricken one, then at the grim, vindicated set of Agnes's jaw. The name Peterson, the repeated mention of AQR, the fire, the brutal violence, it was starting to form a picture uglier and more poisonous than any blizzard. We'll sort this, Cal Brody said, his voice heavy with dawning understanding and disgust. Looks like a long night and a longer investigation. Mark, get these two secured. Call for fire and ambulance if the lines are up further out. Agnes, you're a damned hero. The storm passed by dawn, leaving Lakemont pristine and silent under a blanket of fresh snow. The cabin's porch and part of the front wall were a charred, smoking ruin. But Cal's heavy garage fire door and the quick, though delayed work by the Lakemont Volunteer Fire Department, once they could finally reach them through the snow-clogged roads, had saved the main structure of the house and the garage itself. Silas and Mitch were gone in custody and under medical care before being transferred to a county facility. Ivy now officially Clara Hayes to the authorities, but forever Ivy to Cal sat at Cal's kitchen table, soot-smudged but blessedly intact, nursing a mug of hot sweet tea. The raw, unvarnished, hideous truth of Silas's words hung between them thick and suffocating as the smoke had been. Clara Cal said the name still feeling foreign on his tongue. She winced. Ivy still feels more real. Or maybe neither of them does right now. I don't know who I am, Cal, not anymore. You lied to me, he said quietly, not an accusation, but a statement of fact that landed like a lead weight. I know, she whispered, tears welling, tracing the rim of her mug. I was terrified. The amnesia. It was real at first, mostly. Then fragments started coming back, but I was too scared. The ledger? Silas? AQR? I thought if I told you the whole truth, he'd put you in more danger, or you'd turn me away. Her gaze fell on Silas's discarded wrench, now bagged as evidence on the counter. AQR disposal. What Silas said about Sheriff Peterson, and Ellie, and the water. Cal, the ledger. It has coded payment details, massive sums for LM oversight. I'm sure LM is Lakemont. It has coordinates. Some are very close to the north end of your lake, near that old access road Peterson controlled. For years and years. Cal's face was a mask of dawning, unbearable horror. He relayed Silas's final vicious taunt about Ellie drinking the lake water, his voice flat dead. Ellie, that last year. She was always tired, less energetic, complained of cramps, dizzy spells. Doctors found nothing, called it growing pains or a virus she couldn't shake. He walked stiffly to the window, looking out at the deceptively serene snow-covered lake, now revealed as a sight of profound, insidious betrayal. Old Peterson, our town sheriff. Agnes tried to warn people, and they called her a crank. He built a new summer house on the good side of the lake that year, bigger than anyone else's paid cash. We all just thought he'd invested wisely. The words were like shards of glass in his throat. His own daughter poisoned by the very place he'd brought her to for peace and beauty, a crime facilitated by a man sworn to protect them. The grief was a fresh, gaping wound, more agonizing than the old scar. He turned back to Ivy, new terrible understanding etched on his face. Ellie's room. Letting you stay there, letting you finish her sketch, and the kindness he'd offered now felt like a cruel joke played on him by fate. When I saw her art, Cal, her innocence, it felt like everything I'd lost, everything Silas and his kind had tried to destroy in me. Ivy said, her voice thick with emotion. Finishing her drawing. It was a prayer, a wish for a peace I didn't think existed. You saved my life, Cal. More than once now. Last night. You fought for me like I mattered. Her voice broke. I'll understand if you can't. If this new horror, this poison Silas brought into your life through me, is too much. If you need me to leave, I'll go. I won't bring any more darkness to your door. Cal looked at her, the raw courage etched on her soot-stained face, the honesty in her tear-filled eyes. He thought of his own long years of hiding from life, from feeling, of Silas's vile, gloating words. He returned to the table, his movements slow, deliberate. He took her hand, his grip surprisingly gentle. We've both been living with ghosts, Ivy. He said the name Ivy, feeling right, feeling true. This AQR evil, it's Silas's, and it's Peterson's, and it's the greed of men like them. It's not yours. You were a victim who refused to stay one. You don't have to be Clara the fugitive here, or Ivy the amnesiac. You can just be Ivy, the artist who sees truth, the woman who fought back with a shovel and a tarp and more courage than I've seen in a lifetime. A watery smile touched her lips. I'd like that, Cal. The new terrible truth, as agonizing as parts of it were, hadn't shattered them. It was forging something new, something stronger, tempered in fire and ice. Later that day, Deputy Evans, looking weary but resolute, confirmed Agnes's story and much of what Ivy had told them. Old Sheriff Peterson had indeed personally quashed an early EPA inquiry after extensive closed-door consultations with AQR representatives. Peterson had retired wealthy, selling his new summer house for a massive profit, and moved south years ago, conveniently out of immediate reach. But not, Brody assured them, out of eventual justice. Sheriff Brody initiated a full county and state investigation into AQR's past activities and potential ongoing contamination. The state EPA was officially notified, their sirens finally wailing towards Lakemont. The town of Lakemont, already shaken by the night's violence, and fire was about to be rocked to its core. Ivy stood in Ellie's room, which Cal had insisted she keep using. She looked at the finished lake sketch, Ellie and Cal hand in hand by a sun-dappled lake. "Do you think Ellie would have forgiven me for the shadow I carried, for the danger I brought?" Cal's eyes hard with the thoughts of AQR, and Peterson's betrayal softened as he looked at his daughter's drawing and then at Ivy. "Ellie would have seen you fully, Ivy. Kindly. She had a heart as big as this lake, big as this. And honestly, a ghost of his old smile, the first true one since Silas's words. I think she'd have been damn proud of how you handled that tarp, and especially how you swung that shovel at those bastards." Ivy laughed, a shaky, genuine sound that warmed the room. I think I'm going to paint. A real painting. Of this lake, of this town. If that offer for your garage wall still stands." Cal cleared a large corner in the now smoke-tinged but structurally sound garage. He unearthed Ellie's treasured, unopened set of professional acrylics she'd been saving for something special. "They'll be perfect," Ivy said, her fingers tracing the vibrant tubes of color. She set up an easel and began to sketch not the lake of her nightmares, nor the lake of Cal's grief, but something new. She painted the lake soft and luminous, hinting at an early fragile spring. The old dock not skeletal, but sturdy, inviting. A pair of worn work boots, her boots were depicted stepping forward onto it. In the water's subtle reflection, Cal's quiet, strong silhouette stood beside hers. She titled it simply, "The Place I Chose to Return to." The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, official investigations, and the slow, painful unearthing of Lakemont's buried truths. Silas and his network faced a slew of federal charges. Mitch, facing lesser charges and terrified of Silas's reach, even from jail, cooperated, fully corroborating Ivy's testimony and the details in the AQR ledger. Ivy's detailed testimony about the LM oversight payments, the coded coordinates, and Agnes Perot's sharp memory and meticulously kept notes became crucial linchpins in the case against AQR and the historical corruption in Lakemont. The investigation into Peterson's tenure and AQR's local environmental impact widened daily, a dark stain spreading. Cal, driven by a burning, painful need for answers for Ellie, and for all the children of Lakemont, started his own quiet research. In Ellie's old school project stored in a box he hadn't been able to open for years, he found one on Lakemont's delicate ecosystem. Tucked inside was a water sample analysis kit and report she'd done for a 6th-grade science fair, meticulously documented. The samples were taken from the north shore of the lake, near where Peterson had conveniently built his sudden summer house. The report showed slightly elevated, though, then considered trace levels of certain industrial solvents and heavy metals flagged with Ellie's childish looping question mark, factories nearby, smells, funny sometimes after rain. She hadn't understood the implications. Cal now did, a fresh wave of consuming grief and white-hot anger washing over him. He saw her small, puzzled face, her earnest curiosity, and Silas's leering, triumphant one. When the time came for Ivy, now officially Clara Hayes' key witness, to go to Chicago to testify against Silas's broader organization, Cal drove her. "You don't have to come back here, Ivy, if it's too much." Cal began, his voice rough, as they pulled up to the bus station. "This town, it's got a long, ugly fight ahead. And I'll be in the thick of it. For Ellie, I'll be back," Cal Ivy said firmly, turning to face him. "Lakemont, and you, it's home now. A messy, complicated, wounded home, but mine. Ours. I need to finish this. Then I'm coming home." She pressed a small, rolled canvas into his hand. "Don't open it until I'm back. Promise me." The days stretched long and taut, with an undercurrent of dread and hope. Cal worked in the garage, the familiar rhythms a balm, but the silence was now filled with anticipation and the gnawing ache of Ellie's stolen future. He started clearing Ellie's room, not to erase her, but to make space to honor her memory by fighting for the truth. He pinned Ivy's sketch, "The Man Who Waited Anyway," by his workbench. He carefully gave Ellie's science project and water report to Deputy Evans. The young deputy's face was grim. It became another powerful piece of evidence against AQR, a child's innocent discovery speaking volumes. On the third Sunday of December, clear and bitingly cold, Cal heard the crunch of tires on his snow-packed driveway. Ivy stepped out of Evans' patrol car, weary from travel and testimony, but with a clear, bright, unwavering light in her eyes. Silas was convicted, on almost everything. Racketeering, extortion, multiple environmental violations, conspiracy. She said, a quiet pride in her voice, as Cal walked towards her. The ledger, especially the Lakemont payments, and Peterson's name all over the memos, sealed it. Mitch got a lighter sentence for testifying against the whole damn network. Peterson's been indicted. They'll extradite him. She paused, taking a deep breath of the clean, cold Lakemont air. "It's over, Cal. That part, at least." "I know." A slow smile spread across his face, reaching his eyes. Evans gave a respectful nod and drove off, leaving them in the quiet afternoon. She smiled back, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Did you open it?" He led her into the garage, to the newly cleared wall space. He unrolled the small canvas she'd given him. It was another lake scene, but this one unlike any she'd painted before. It was a vision of pure hope, and the lake at sunrise, the water glassy, reflecting a sky of blush and gold. On the dock stood Ivy, laughing, a bright yellow scarf blowing in a gentle breeze. And beside her, Cal, older, weathered, but his eyes lifted, strong and kind. Side by side. And in the background, rendered softly, almost ethereally, were two children. Ellie, bright and vibrant, and a young boy with dark, observant eyes, an echo of a childhood Ivy never had, chasing each other along the water's edge, their laughter almost audible. "I wanted to paint the future I still believe we can have," Ivy said softly, her shoulder brushing his, as they looked at it. "The one we can build if we're strong enough to clean up the poison of the past." Cal pulled her into an embrace, holding her tight. She was fire and steel and astonishing grace. That evening, they hung the painting in the most prominent spot in the garage. Spring in Lakemont that year came not with a gentle thaw, but with an exuberant, defiant rush. The ice on the lake shattered and melted with astonishing speed. The garage, aired out, scrubbed clean of soot, now carried the pleasant undertones of turpentine linseed oil and lavender soap Ivy used. Ivy's corner was a vibrant, paint-splattered studio. The town finally facing the ugly, widespread truth about AQR's decades of pollution and Peterson's deep complicity was slowly, painfully, and angrily starting to demand accountability, remediation, and justice. Town meetings were no longer sleepy affairs. It was Ivy's idea, a community open house at Cal's garage. Second Chance's Garage and Studio read the new brightly painted sign Cal had repaired, and Ivy had decorated with images of wildflowers and sturdy tools. Underneath a smaller line, repairs for your ride rejuvenation, for your spirit resources, for our lake's future. The place hummed with a new kind of life. Neighbors who'd once been reserved brought their kids to dabble with paints Ivy provided. Cal's regulars came for oil changes and stayed for coffee-sharing stories and organizing water testing initiatives. Ivy crouched beside a small, solemn girl, showing her how to mix blue and yellow to make the exact green of new spring leaves. She told me, Ivy said to Cal later, her voice thick with emotion, that when I talk about colors, it feels like listening to sunlight. She's not wrong, Ivy, Cal said, his own heart full. One evening, Ivy pulled out a small, carefully wrapped frame from her bag. This is for you, Cal. It was a delicate charcoal sketch, Cal on his porch, a mug of coffee in one hand and the other, outstretched palm up, as if testing for rain. In his open palm, a single small, resilient flower was depicted blooming in defiant color amidst the gray tones. At the bottom, in Ivy's elegant script, where winter ends, hope begins. For Cal, who showed me how. I don't deserve this, he said, his voice husky. Yes, you do? Ivy said, her eyes full of unwavering affection. You reminded me I could be more than just a survivor. You showed me what it meant to truly fight for something, not just run from it. I didn't save you that day on the ice, Ivy. Not really. You saved yourself even then. And you definitely saved us both in that cabin with that shovel. Maybe she conceded. But I desperately needed someone to believe I was worth saving first. You did that. You dove into the ice for a stranger. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. Around them, the garage was quiet, the tools silent, the paintings glowing faintly in the fading light. For Cal and Ivy, everything stilled, anchored by the hard-won peace between them. As the sun dipped below the tree line, they stood together in the wide doorway of the garage, watching the light shimmer on the now open waters of the lake. It was no longer a place solely of sorrow for Cal or of terror for Ivy, but a symbol of resilience and a testament to the tough, demanding path toward new beginnings. Did you ever think, Ivy asked, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder, your life would end up looking like this, so full of paint and righteous anger and community meetings? No. Cal admitted, a slow smile spreading across his face. Not in a million years. But now, I can't imagine it being any other way. He held up Ellie's old precious water report, then looked towards Ivy's vibrant paintings, breathing life into the garage. We have a lot of work to do, Ivy. For her. For this town. For all the Ellies out there. Later that night, after the last of their friends had left, Ivy placed a fresh, large canvas on her easel. What masterpiece are you conjuring now? Cal asked, leaning against the doorframe, watching her. She smiled, a secret, hopeful curve of her lips. I don't know yet. But I think I'll call it Lakemont Springs. Something about the future. Something clean and strong and unshakable. Cal realized with a profound sense of clarity that the ice was truly gone. From the lake it would eventually recede with much effort and unwavering communal will. From his heart it had definitively, irrevocably melted. A man who had thought his heart was frozen solid beyond repair had found not just warmth, but a blazing, vibrant fire. She had come to him as a ghost from the ice, a life nearly extinguished. He had pulled not just her life from those frigid depths, but astonishingly, miraculously, his own. Sometimes Deputy Evans' patrol car drove slowly past the garage. A wave exchanged a silent acknowledgement of storms, weathered battles fought, and the hard, imperfect peace still being forged day by day in Lakemont. The Second Chance's garage and studio sign, lit by a single warm bulb Cal had installed, was a small but steady beacon in the Minnesota night. A place for repairs, for art, for justice, and for the astonishing, enduring capacity of the human spirit to heal, to demand change, and to begin anew even after the harshest, most poisoned of winters.